Hello, 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 and welcome everyone. Welcome to our Path of a Magdalena program. So for anyone joining for the first time, this is a year-long gifted program. And the intention of the Path of Magdalena program is really to explore the different qualities of Mary Magdalena. And each month we take a different quality and we begin to learn more about the quality and cultivate these qualities in our own life. And so each month we have an interview with a Magdalena practitioner about the quality. We have inquiry questions. We do a Facebook Live, a live event like we're doing today. And then we have lots of social media engagement throughout the month. So thank you all so much for joining us today. And I also want to thank everyone who joined us last month. Last month, we dove into this quality of wisdom. And that was it was really fantastic. And this month, we are moving into the quality of purity. And when Lisa was first talking about this quality, my first thought was, oh my gosh, I don't know if this one's for me. I thought, oh, maybe somebody else should lead this Facebook Live discussion. But this group of Magdalena practitioners and myself have been exploring this quality this month and beyond. So we want really this conversation today to be an exploratory one. So I want to introduce our panel of Magdalena practitioners. We have Lisa Guinan with us from Ireland. We have a very special guest of Dave Miller today joining us from Colorado. Dave is usually on the other side of the tech AV piece, but we have him a special guest on this side of the camera today. And then we have Rachel Simpson joining us from upstate New York. And Rachel is a dear friend of mine for over 10 years now. So this is our really special panel today. And I invite you throughout this conversation to engage, write things in the chat, let us know what you're thinking. We're really working through this one together. So to our panel here, I would like to ask you this first question. And I'm wondering what is the typical or historical definition of purity that you learned throughout your life? What comes to mind, and any discomfort around the word or the quality?
So I can start this one off. So the culture that I was raised in is one where there were absolutely some very specific and for me, pretty traumatic and uncomfortable associations with the word purity, because in the culture that I grew up in, purity always came with what was not pure. And so there was a judgment, a right and a wrong, an element of shame. And a lot of it was around things that you were supposed to do or not supposed to do. And there was like never a way back of like, if you mess something up, you're just impure, you're dirty, you're wrong, you're whatever it is. And it's kind of everything that, where I was from, it's everything that fits into that kind of like sex, drugs, and rock and roll kind of category would have been in that bucket of things that were impure. And so for me, for a long time, purity was a place where I really contracted, because what I experienced was this like, oh, I'm going to get judged. I'm going to get shamed. And, I'm going to be wrong for whatever I've chosen to do in my life. And it's been an interesting journey for me in getting to understand purity through a totally new kind of what I would almost call like a clear lens of really diving into the story and who Mary Magdalena is and the energy of Mary Magdalena.
So for me, very similar to Rachel, actually. I would have grown up in a Catholic religion. And for me as well, I always connected as a child with the whole thing about there being something greater than me and God. So I always wanted to be the best that I could be. And with purity, the way I, perceived it as a really young child was not having any emotions like anger or jealousy, you know, that this was impure. And I remember trying so hard not to feel jealous of my brother or sister, or not to get angry and not to row. And I just couldn't. And it was almost like the more I tried, the more all of this stuff came up. And for me, as a kid, it was like a trick. It was like I so wanted to be there, but everything, it was just impossible. And the harder I tried, the more of this stuff came up. And then that like shame of just, and that unworthiness of not being good enough, not being able to be this pure person that I believed I should be, you know, and then that would have led in my later years to rebelling. It was like, I can't do this. And then rebelling against everything that was pure. So, you know, like you, Cara, we picked this quality, and then I was like, oh my God, no. Oh, I don't like this at all. But, you know, it's so good because it's such an opportunity to really revisit all of that, and to also to heal anything that's still lurking in those corners.
Hmm. And I would invite anyone who's on the live to write a word in the chat, or, what does purity, or, when you think historically in your life, what did purity mean, or what does purity mean? For me, it was certainly not having fun. Like, that's what purity was. It was like very restrictive, and whatever it was, it certainly wasn't going to be fun. And therefore, I just wasn't really that interested in it. That was my experience.
I do have something I can add.
Yes.
For me, it was an unattainable quality, right? I was never gonna get there. That's the way I was taught, right? Because I was also brought up as Catholic, and then I was in the seminary as well for 3 years. And it was just, we worked with Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa is the epitome of purity in my view, but it was like we would never be able to get there. That's just how I interpreted what I was taught.
And so, listening to what everyone shared, what would you add? What are you learning now about purity that you didn't know then, or purity might have been distorted then, but what's new now? What different facets are there to purity?
I would say there's a vulnerability, being vulnerable and open and authentic, and being in the heart. I heard Lisa had said that earlier, and it's just the energetic of purity for me is just really being accessible, available, vulnerable, loving to some, as much as loving, and not in an attached way, but just allowing the love from the heart to be present.
Yeah, and I just add to that, it's like, from my understanding now, it's really honoring all aspects of my being and not judging them, because when I'm judging the parts of me that aren't pure, I'm in an energy of judgment. It's impossible for me to be in an energy of purity. So for me to be in that state of purity, I have to be honoring all of these, the human part of me that just messes up all the time. That's part of it.
And I would say for me, a big part of even beginning to experience purity, because I don't think I would have been able to experience this like beautiful, vulnerable, kind of transparent quality if it weren't for clearing out the things that were kind of in the way. So actually, a lot of those things that, from when I was younger, all those things that were bad, all those judgments, the criticisms, the guilt, the shame, actually clearing that, healing that, working with that, giving it back to wherever I picked it up from, it's like that can be that person's belief. I don't have to live there. It's not mine. I don't have to keep it if I don't want to. That really opened up a space where my own natural purity could just start to arise. And for me, it's when I am in that state where I'm like, oh, this feels like purity. There's no layers to it. There's no like double meaning or manipulation or you know, I'm saying one thing, but in the background is like these 5 things that have gotten triggered, and you know, there's like a push pull inside of me as to what I'm expressing. Purity is like just a beingness. I'm almost saying like a pure beingness, but it's there's so much there, and it just comes out naturally when that space is clear, in my experience.
Yes, Rachel. And what I've been learning more this month is what my historic definition of purity was one of acts I should or shouldn't take, things I can or can't do, things I must or no way can do to fall in the category of purity. But what I'm learning more, and actually I heard this in all of your shares, is it's actually a way of being. Rather than the focus on doing one thing or not doing anything or the one thing, it's really how you're showing up. Like a clear, like there's like a nothing between you and another person or you and whatever you're doing. That's what I'm learning more about purity. And I'm wondering if any one of the panelists today could share an example of purity in their life, whether themselves or purity that they experienced from someone else, and what type of impact that had on you.
I can share. My son, Gabriel, was a severely disabled person. He was born that way. And he required 24/7 nursing care for his whole life. And I ended up taking care of him and as a single dad until he was around 18-ish or so. And he was just the purest being that I've ever met and served. And that, he totally changed my life, certainly opened my heart. And serving Gabe every day, all the things that are around with it didn't matter to me. I didn't care what I had to do, how long it took. I would just do it with love and caring and just being open and vulnerable. He was the most vulnerable being that I've ever seen, and frequently disabled people are. So it's just opening myself to the possibilities and to the love of, even though he was my son, he was also a lot of work, as you might imagine. But it's just totally transformed my life. Just in service. I'm just going to say in service is a real heart opener.
And Dave, what I notice is when you're sharing the way that Gabe affected you, it ripples because then I felt it. So like Gabe's purity, of course, spread to you, and then myself, and I'm sure others are just touched by that way of being.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
I could share, for me, so in my life, in my work, I'm a physician, and one of the things that I have the absolute privilege of doing is being with people at some of the most vulnerable moments of their lives. And in those moments, what I've learned is it's the purity of who I can be with them in getting me, like the ego me, the personality me, the small me, the me with my, everyday concerns, having that be out of the way and just being able to be with people and honor them, see them in their dignity, support them, empower them in whatever that moment is bringing in that moment. Sometimes it's at the end of life, and I can remember sitting in patients' rooms, holding someone's hand and just being a presence with them as they called their family to deliver really difficult news. And it's not what I can fix in those moments, it's who I am. And just being with them and allowing them to be who they are, there's a purity that's needed in that. And it serves so much. It allows that love to come forth.
Just really reminds me, Rachel, when you're speaking there, like if that quality that also surrender is needed to access that state of purity. It reminds me when my mother was really ill and I had to surrender, and just moving into that very innocent, childlike place. And there was a purity in it that was beautiful, that came with that surrendering, that letting go.
I wanted to share, we have something in the chat too. Purity for me is to trust myself to be in my heart. Yeah. So I know we're coming to the end of our time together, and I'm really trying to stay on track, but there's so many more questions I want to ask. But I think what I'll end with is, first of all, I want to say I'm so touched by your purity shares. It's the actual experience of purity, but then it's beyond that. It's like a rippling effect. I don't know. That's just what keeps coming to mind. It just keeps touching more and more folks when we can really be in that state. So my final question is, for some of our viewers out there, they're thinking, okay, well, I like the sounds of this. I'm kind of starting to see things differently. What can I do? Like, what is an action I can take? Or how can I really start to cultivate this quality within myself? And I'm wondering what you all may advise for that.
I can go first. You know, for me, when I watch the experiences that I made in my life, it's things like when I spend time with like a newborn baby. You know, they're already in that energy of innocence and purity. So for me, when I'm there with them, even when I look at a picture of a little young baby, straight away I just open up into that state of purity. And then I begin to observe what that feels like in my body, the way my heart opens, and the way there's the innocence and humbleness inside me, and you know how that feels in my body, how I feel this like a sensation of grace pouring down into me. And you know, other places I might experience it, like always I have it with like new, even puppies or lambs. Like you get lambs in the fields here, and just looking at them, straight away I'm in it. Or music, there's certain music, and I put it on, and straight away again I'm into that place, and I go, okay, so this is the same place. It feels the same as when I'm with a baby. And also there'll be times when I'm in nature, just somewhere beautiful, and the same thing is happening again. So every time I do that, I'm really anchoring and grounding what the experience of purity is inside of me. And then the more used I get to it, I can just go purity, and I just move into it because my body knows what it feels like to be in that state of purity.
And I would say for me, where the practice comes in is when I'm becoming aware that I'm getting caught in something that's not serving me, that's not purity, that's not that openness. One of my default patterns is resistance. And, you know, if something comes in, it's uncomfortable, or I don't like it, or I think I have to manage it, and I just freeze up and I resist it, I fight it. And some of you, maybe you relate to that, maybe I'm the only one. But for me, what has me get back in touch with that state of purity is to, you know, Lisa talked about surrender, but for me, it's almost like this practice of taking whatever it is that I'm feeling. And if I, and either, you know, if I can allow myself to feel it and be with it and just allow it to move through, that in and of itself brings me back in touch with that purity. And sometimes I get stuck in it more. And so what I've come to practice is sometimes I will just offer it up to my soul, to my spirit, to Mary Magdalena, to something, you know, this part of me, or, you know, in the case of Mary Magdalena, her as this saint, this example of someone who just lives in that state of that pureness of heart, that pureness of devotion. And I say, I'm not doing this all on my own. Please, please bless this. Please, please help me with this. And I turn it over. And that allows me to be in that state of that innocence and that purity again. That's one of my practices.
And I would find something to volunteer for and to serve in a way that's, in a big way, that's a devotion. My experience, devotion cultivates that purity. And you put your heart into it, be vulnerable, love it, and just connect with it. If you can find something to serve, that does change us.
Yeah, I really am beginning to understand that purity is tied to so many other qualities, like purity of heart, purity and surrender, purity and devotion, certainly purity and love. So I think that this quality links with so many of the other qualities of Mary Magdalena that we've looked at so far this year and throughout the whole Path of a Magdalena program. I like to share that one action that I'm going to take is selecting one thing each day, not for a long time, maybe 5 minutes, but really just do it with nothing else in the way. Like, if I'm unloading the dishes and I don't really want to do it, just moving more into a state of purity rather than, I know Rachel shared about this, resistance. Just taking 5 minutes, because I think that's a lot of it for me, is I don't want anything to be in between, like anything to muck it up. So just practicing that 5 minutes a day with different tasks. That's what I'm going to be doing, be practicing throughout the month. So anything else? Any final words from our panel here? I know we're over 5 minutes. Sorry. I'm working on that. They're just so rich.
I was just going to say thank you. Thank you all for being here and for being part of this conversation with us. It's really, really amazing to get to connect in this way.
It is.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, I'm also so grateful that you all joined us, whether it was live or you'll be watching the recording. There's a lot to engage with us over the next month. For the inquiry, really start thinking about what really is purity and what is possible for me if I am moving through life in a more pure state or more cultivating purity. What's possible for me? Because as you heard from each one of these panelists, the purity was important, but the way that that purity affected other people's lives, that's the impact. So really begin thinking about what that is for you. And we'll be sharing some different examples of purity on social media throughout the month. Lisa has arranged for some really fantastic purity as it relates to music. So that will be special. So tune in to our social media next week. And yes, we are all in this together this month. Oh, Lisa, please.
Just as well, there's a beautiful meditation on purity that Lolita, it's on the Path of Magdalena webinar this month, and we've made a clip of it, and it's on the Facebook page, and we post it every Monday. And if people really want to have an experience of the energy of purity, it's perfect meditation. It's so good for it.
Yes. So just dive right in with us. Thank you all so much again, and we will see you very soon.